For my birthday gift, my daughter-in-law slapped me so hard across the face I lost my balance. You're selfish. Sell the house and give us the money, or disappear from our lives forever. I could barely stand back up, but when I made a phone call, I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The sting across my face was so sharp I thought I'd been struck by lightning. My cheek burned, my vision blurred, and I stumbled backward, my 68-year-old legs betraying me as I crashed into the kitchen counter. The sound of my body hitting the marble echoed through the room, but it was nothing compared to the silence that followed. You are selfish. Haley's voice cut through the air like a blade. Sell the house and give us the money, or disappear from our lives forever. I pressed my palm against my throbbing cheek, trying to steady myself as I looked up at my daughter-in-law. Her face was twisted with rage, her perfectly manicured nails still clenched into fists. This was supposed to be my birthday party. My 68th birthday party. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent weeks planning this gathering, hoping to bring the family together. I'd cooked Marcus's favorite pot roast, made Haley's preferred lemon cake from scratch, even bought new placemats for the dining room table. I wanted everything to be perfect, because lately, I'd felt the distance growing between us, and I thought maybe a celebration would bridge that gap. How naive I was. Haley, please, I whispered, my voice shaking. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth where I'd bitten my tongue during the impact. Can we just talk about this calmly? She laughed, a cold sound that made my skin crawl. Calmly? Mother Ann, there's nothing calm about watching you hoard money while your own son struggles to pay his bills. I turned to Marcus, my son, my only child, hoping he would defend me, hoping he would tell his wife that hitting a 68-year-old woman was unacceptable. But he stood there by the window, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, staring at his shoes like a child who'd been caught stealing candy. Marcus, my voice cracked, are you going to let her talk to me like this? Are you going to let her hit me? He finally looked up, and what I saw in his eyes broke something inside me. It wasn't love or concern or even basic human decency. It was irritation. I was irritating him. Mom, you're being dramatic, he said, his tone flat and dismissive. Haley barely touched you. Barely touched me? I could feel my cheek swelling, could taste the blood from where my teeth had cut my tongue. But more than the physical pain was the emotional devastation of realizing that my own son cared so little about my well-being. I've been more than patient with you, Haley continued, pacing around my kitchen like she owned it. For 5 years, I've watched you live in this huge house all by yourself, while Marcus and I struggle to make ends meet in our tiny apartment. Do you know how selfish that looks? I wanted to remind her that this was my house, that I'd lived here for 37 years, that my late husband Robert and I had saved every penny to buy this place and turn it into a home. I wanted to tell her that I'd offered them money before, only to watch them spend it on designer handbags and expensive dinners while complaining they were broke. But the words wouldn't come. The shock of being physically assaulted in my own kitchen had left me speechless. The kids at school are starting to ask questions, Marcus added, finally joining his wife's attack. They want to know why Grandma lives in a mansion while we're crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment. The kids, my grandchildren, 8-year-old Emma and 6-year-old Tyler. The light of my life. The reason I looked forward to Sundays when they would visit. Were they really being told that their grandmother was selfish? Were they being turned against me? I never said I wouldn't help you, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. But selling this house, this is my home. This is where your father grew up, Marcus. This is where I feel closest to your dad. Haley rolled her eyes dramatically. Robert has been dead for 8 years, Anne. 8 years. It's time to stop living in the past and start thinking about the people who are actually still alive and need your help. The cruelty of her words hit me like a second slap. Robert had been everything to me. When he died of cancer, this house was all I had left of our life together. Every room held memories. The kitchen where we'd cooked together, the living room where we'd watched old movies, the garden where he'd proposed 43 years ago. I could help you in other ways, I offered desperately. I could give you money for a down payment on a bigger place. I have savings. We don't want your charity, Haley snapped. We want what's rightfully ours. This house is worth at least $400,000. That money could change our lives. Rightfully theirs? I stared at my son, waiting for him to correct his wife, to remind her that this was my property, my decision. But he said nothing. Worse than nothing. He nodded in agreement. Mom, you're 70 years old, Marcus said. 68, I corrected automatically. Whatever. The point is, you don't need a 4-bedroom house. You could get a nice little apartment somewhere, maybe one of those senior communities. You'd probably be happier around people your own age anyway. People my own age. As if I were some burden to be shuffled off to a warehouse for the elderly. As if my life no longer had value beyond what I could provide for them. I tried to stand straighter, to find some dignity in this moment, but my legs were still shaky from the fall. This is my home, I repeated, more firmly this time. I'm not selling it. Haley's face darkened. Fine. Then don't expect to see your grandchildren anymore. Don't expect Sunday dinners or birthday visits or Christmas mornings. You've made your choice, Anne. You've chosen a house over your family. The threat hit me harder than her hand had. Emma and Tyler were my world. The thought of not seeing them grow up, of missing their school plays and soccer games, of them forgetting their grandmother existed, was more terrifying than anything I could imagine. You can't keep me from my grandchildren, I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew how powerless I was. They were the parents. They made the rules. Watch us, Marcus said coldly. Come on, Haley. We're leaving. They gathered their coats and headed for the door, leaving me standing alone in my kitchen, my cheek throbbing, my heart shattered. At the door, Haley turned back one more time. You have 24 hours to think about it, Anne. Sell the house and give us the money, or lose your family forever. Your choice. The door slammed shut, leaving me in deafening silence. I sank into a kitchen chair, my hands trembling as I touched my swollen cheek. This wasn't how 68 was supposed to feel. This wasn't how family was supposed to treat each other. But as I sat there in the growing darkness, something began to stir inside me. It wasn't fear or sadness, though both of those emotions were certainly present. It was something else entirely. Something that felt almost like clarity. I reached for my phone, my fingers surprisingly steady as I scrolled through my contacts. There was a call I needed to make, a conversation that was 20 years overdue. As I pressed the number, I realized that perhaps this birthday would mark more than just another year of my life. Perhaps it would mark the beginning of something entirely new. The bruise had turned a deep purple by morning. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, gingerly touching the swollen area around my left eye. The pain was constant now, a dull throbbing that reminded me with every heartbeat of yesterday's humiliation. But it wasn't just the physical pain that kept me awake all night. It was the growing certainty that something was very wrong with my family. Dr. Martinez frowned as he examined my face, his gentle fingers probing the tender area around my cheekbone. Anne, this is quite severe. How exactly did this happen? I had planned to lie, to make up some story about a fall or walking into a door. The shame of admitting that my daughter-in-law had struck me felt too enormous to voice. But sitting in that sterile examination room, something inside me cracked open. My daughter-in-law hit me, I said quietly. Dr. Martinez stopped what he was doing and looked directly into my eyes. Someone struck you in the face? I nodded, feeling tears threaten to spill over. During my birthday party yesterday. She wants me to sell my house and give them the money. The doctor's expression hardened. Anne, this is assault. Have you reported this to the police? Oh, no, I said quickly. I couldn't do that. She's family. It was just, she was upset. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. But even as I said the words, I knew they sounded hollow. Dr. Martinez clearly thought so too, because he sat down across from me with a concerned expression. Anne, I've been your doctor for 15 years. I've watched you care for Robert through his illness. I've seen you bounce back from your own health scares. And I've never known you to be dramatic or exaggerate. If someone in your family is physically abusing you, it's not like that, I interrupted, though part of me wondered if maybe it was exactly like that. It's complicated. Doctor, Martinez prescribed pain medication for the bruising and made me promise to call him if anything like this happened again. As I left his office, I felt more confused than ever. Was I overreacting? Was this really abuse? Or just a family disagreement that got out of hand? My questions were answered when I stopped by the grocery store on my way home. I was reaching for a box of tea when I heard familiar voices from the next aisle over. My heart lifted for a moment, thinking perhaps Marcus and Haley had come to apologize. But as I listened more closely, my blood turned cold. The doctor says it's getting worse, Haley was saying to someone on her phone. Early onset dementia. Some days she doesn't even recognize us. I froze, my hand still extended toward the tea box. Dementia? What was she talking about? I know, Haley continued. It's heartbreaking. Marcus is beside himself. We're trying to get her into a nice facility, but she's fighting us on it. Sometimes the patients become violent when they're confused. Yesterday, she actually tried to hit me. My mouth fell open. She was lying, completely boldly lying about what had happened, and apparently this wasn't the first time she'd told this story. We're going to have to get power of attorney soon. Haley's voice drifted closer as she moved through the store. The house needs to be sold before she hurts herself or someone else. The doctor says these episodes are only going to get worse. I backed away from the aisle, my heart hammering in my chest. I managed to make it to my car before the full impact hit me. Haley wasn't just spreading lies about me, she was building a case. She was creating a narrative that would justify taking control of my life, my home, my finances. When I got home, I went straight to my desk and began looking through my important papers. Everything seemed to be in order. My will, my insurance policies, my bank statements. But then I found something that made my stomach drop. Tucked between some old utility bills was a document I didn't remember seeing before. It was a power of attorney form, partially filled out, with Marcus's name listed as the agent. My signature line was blank, but there was a note in the margin in handwriting I didn't recognize. Subject refuses to sign. May need medical evaluation to establish incapacity. My hands shook as I read the words again. They were actually planning this. They were building a case to have me declared mentally incompetent so they could take control of my assets. I called Marcus immediately, my heart pounding as I waited for him to answer. Hi, Mom. His voice was cautious. How are you feeling today? Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Have you been telling people that I have dementia? There was a long pause. Mom, why would you ask that? Because I overheard Haley at the grocery store telling someone that I have early onset dementia and that I tried to hit her yesterday. Another pause. Longer this time. Mom, I think you might be confused. Are you sure you heard her correctly? The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that for a moment I doubted myself. Had I misheard? Was I being paranoid? I know what I heard, Marcus. Okay, look. His tone became more serious. We are concerned about you. You've been more forgetful lately. More difficult. The way you reacted yesterday, getting so upset over a simple conversation about your living situation. She hit me, Marcus. Your wife physically assaulted me in my own kitchen. Mom, you fell. You lost your balance during an argument and fell against the counter. Haley was trying to help you, and you pushed her away. I felt like I was drowning. Was this how it happened? Was this how families destroyed each other, one lie at a time until the victim began to doubt their own reality? I want you to bring me any papers you have with my name on them, I said firmly. Any documents, any forms, anything that requires my signature. What? Mom? Why would we have papers with your name on them? Just bring them, Marcus. Tonight. I don't think that's a good idea. You're clearly agitated. And Dr. Rodriguez said we should avoid stressing you when you're having an episode. Dr. Rodriguez? I didn't know any Dr. Rodriguez. Dr. Martinez had been my physician for 15 years. Who is Dr. Rodriguez? Your new psychiatrist, Mom. The one we took you to see last month. Remember? You were having those memory problems, and we thought it would be good for you to talk to someone. I had never seen a psychiatrist. I would have remembered that. But the way Marcus spoke about it, with such certainty, such detail, made me question everything. Was I losing my mind? Was this what dementia felt like? Being convinced that events that never happened were somehow real? I hung up the phone and sat in my quiet house, surrounded by 40 years of memories, and wondered if I could trust my own mind. The bruise on my face was real. The pain was real. But everything else felt like it was shifting beneath my feet, like reality itself was being rewritten around me. That's when I remembered the phone call I'd almost made the night before. The number I'd found, but hadn't dialed. With trembling fingers, I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found it. It was time to call the one person who might have answers. The one person who knew secrets that even I had tried to forget. As I pressed the number, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my family was about to change forever. Harold Whitman's voice was exactly as I remembered it, warm, professional, with that slight rasp that came from decades of courtroom arguments. He had been Robert's attorney, then mine, for over 20 years. When Robert died, Harold had handled the estate with such care and discretion that I'd kept him on retainer ever since, though I rarely had reason to call him. "Anne, it's wonderful to hear from you," he said, though I could detect concern in his tone. "When I got your message, I have to admit I was worried. You sounded distressed." I was sitting in Robert's old study, surrounded by his law books and the framed photos of our life together. This room had always made me feel safe, protected, but now it felt like the only sanctuary I had left. "Harold, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Has Marcus ever contacted you about obtaining power of attorney over my affairs?" There was a pause that lasted just a beat too long. "Anne, why are you asking me this?" "Because I found a partially completed power of attorney document in my papers, and my son and his wife seem to be telling people that I have dementia. I need to know if there's something going on that I'm not aware of." Harold's sigh was audible through the phone. "Anne, I think you should come to my office. There are some things we need to discuss in person." "Just tell me, Harold, has Marcus contacted you?" "Yes," he said quietly, "about 6 months ago. He came to see me with concerns about your mental state. He wanted to know what steps would need to be taken if you became incapacitated." My stomach dropped. 6 months ago. This had been planned for 6 months. "What did you tell him?" "I told him that you seemed perfectly competent to me, and that any such proceedings would require medical documentation and court approval. I also told him that if he had genuine concerns about your well-being, he should speak to you directly." "But Harold," my voice was barely a whisper, "there's something else, isn't there? Something you're not telling me." Another pause, longer this time. "Anne, I think this conversation should happen face to face. Harold, please. Whatever it is, I need to know now." I heard him take a deep breath. "Anne, when Marcus came to see me, he brought up some questions about your family history. Specifically, he wanted to know about adoption records. The world tilted on its axis." "What?" "He was asking about accessing sealed adoption records from the 1970s. He seemed to think there might be some irregularities in his own adoption paperwork." My mouth went dry. The room seemed to spin around me as memories I'd buried for 45 years came rushing back. "Harold, what exactly did he ask you?" "He wanted to know if there were any legal heirs to your estate that might have a stronger claim than an adopted child." "Anne, I have to ask, did you ever tell Marcus that he was adopted?" The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto Robert's desk. I stared at it for a long moment before picking it up again, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. "Anne, are you there?" "He doesn't know," I whispered. "Marcus doesn't know he's adopted." I was afraid of that. "Anne, I think someone has been doing research into your family history without your knowledge. The questions Marcus was asking were very specific. He knew things about your past that I'm not sure how he could have discovered on his own." My mind raced back through the past months, looking for clues I might have missed. The way Marcus had been asking about my childhood lately wanting to see old photos, asking about relatives he'd never shown interest in before. The way Haley had been unusually interested in my jewelry box, my personal papers, my old correspondence. "Harold, I need you to tell me something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Is my daughter still alive?" The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. "Harold? Anne, I can't discuss sealed adoption records over the phone, but I think you should know that someone has been making inquiries. Someone has been asking questions about a child born in 1978. 1978? The year that changed everything. The year I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl and was forced to give her up because I was unmarried, because my family threatened to disown me, because the world was different then, and single mothers were shamed into silence. I had been 23 years old, working as a secretary in Chicago, when I found out I was pregnant. The father was a married man who disappeared the moment I told him. My parents were horrified. My reputation was ruined, and the pressure to give the baby up for adoption was overwhelming. But before that baby was born, I had met Robert. Sweet, kind Robert, who loved me despite my scandal, who married me when I was 6 months pregnant, who promised to raise the child as his own. We had picked out names, decorated a nursery, planned our life as a family of 3. And then the unthinkable happened. "Anne, I think you need to come in tomorrow morning. There are some documents you need to see." "What kind of documents?" "The kind that might explain why Marcus has been so interested in your estate planning lately. And Anne, I think you should also know that someone has been in contact with the adoption agency that handled your daughter's placement." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "I mean, someone has been trying to locate her. And based on the timing of these inquiries, I believe they may have succeeded." I set the phone down and stared out the window at the garden where Robert had proposed all those years ago. Everything I thought I knew about my life was crumbling around me. Marcus, the son I had adopted 3 years after losing my biological daughter, didn't know he wasn't my natural child. Someone was trying to find the daughter I'd been forced to give away, and my daughter-in-law was systematically destroying my reputation and trying to gain control of my assets. But there was something else, something Harold hadn't said directly, but that I was beginning to understand. If someone was looking for my biological daughter, and if that someone was Marcus and Haley, there could only be one reason. They wanted to eliminate any potential claims to my estate. I picked up the phone again with trembling fingers. "Harold, I need to ask you one more question. If my biological daughter is still alive, if she's out there somewhere, does she have any legal claim to my estate?" "Anne, that's a complicated question that depends on many factors. But I will say this. In some circumstances, biological children can contest wills, especially if they can prove they were unaware of their biological parents' existence. And if Marcus isn't legally my son. Anne, Marcus is legally your son. The adoption was finalized properly. But if someone is trying to build a case that you have other heirs, other family members who should be considered." I understood now. The power of attorney, the claims of dementia, the systematic isolation from friends and extended family. It was all part of a larger plan. Marcus and Haley weren't just trying to get my house. They were trying to ensure that I had no other options, no other family to turn to, no other heirs who might complicate their inheritance. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had led me directly to the one person who might be able to help me. The daughter I had never stopped thinking about. The child I had grieved for 45 years. The missing piece of my heart that I had always hoped to find. "Harold," I said, my voice stronger now than it had been in days, "I need you to find her. I need you to find my daughter before they do." "Anne, are you sure about this? Once we start down this path, there's no going back." I looked around Robert's study, at the life we had built together, at the family photos that now felt like lies, at the home that Marcus and Haley were trying to steal from me. "I'm sure. It's time to stop running from the past. It's time to find the family I should have had all along." The coffee shop Harold had suggested was small and quiet, tucked away in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. I arrived 30 minutes early, my hands shaking as I ordered tea I wouldn't drink. Every few minutes, I checked my reflection in my compact mirror, trying to cover the fading bruise on my cheek with makeup that couldn't quite hide the truth of what had happened. 45 years. 45 years since I'd held my baby girl. Since I'd whispered promises I couldn't keep into her tiny ear. Since I'd kissed her forehead and handed her to strangers because I was told it was what was best for her. I had imagined this moment countless times over the decades. In my dreams, she was always angry with me, demanding to know why I hadn't fought harder to keep her. Sometimes she was cold and distant, uninterested in the mother who had abandoned her. Other times she was desperate and broken, damaged by a lifetime in foster care or with adoptive parents who hadn't loved her the way I would have. I was not prepared for the woman who walked through the coffee shop door at exactly 2 o'clock. She was beautiful in a way that took my breath away, with my mother's cheekbones and Robert's kind eyes. Her dark hair was pulled back in a professional bun, and she wore a tailored navy suit that spoke of success and confidence. She moved with purpose, scanning the room until her gaze found mine, and in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that this was my daughter. But it was the expression on her face that undid me completely. It wasn't anger or resentment or even curiosity, it was recognition. As if she had been looking for me as long as I had been looking for her. Anne? Her voice was soft, uncertain, but there was warmth in it that I hadn't dared to hope for. I stood on unsteady legs, my purse clutching in my hands like a lifeline. Sarah? Harold had told me her name yesterday, along with everything else he'd been able to discover. Sarah Elizabeth Crawford, 45 years old, unmarried, a successful attorney with her own practice in downtown Chicago. She had been raised by loving adoptive parents who had died when she was in her 20s, leaving her with no family except distant cousins she rarely saw. She had been searching for me for over 20 years. "May I sit down?" she asked, and I nodded, not trusting my voice. We sat across from each other in silence for a long moment, both of us studying the face we'd never seen but somehow knew. Her hands were folded on the table, and I noticed she wore no wedding ring, that her nails were short and practical, that she had a small scar on her knuckle that I wanted to ask about but didn't dare. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me," she said finally. "When Mr. Whitman called and said you were looking for me, I thought it might be some kind of mistake." "I've wanted to see you every day for 45 years, I said, and my voice broke on the words. "I never stopped thinking about you. I never stopped hoping I'd find you someday." Tears gathered in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "My adoptive parents were wonderful people. They told me about you when I was old enough to understand. They said you were very young and that giving me up was the hardest thing you'd ever done." I pressed my hand to my mouth, trying to hold back the sob that was building in my chest. "It was. It nearly killed me. But everyone said it was better for you, that you'd have opportunities with them that I couldn't give you." "They were right," Sarah said gently. "Mom and Dad gave me everything. Love, education, stability. They encouraged me to find you when I was ready, but they also made sure I knew that I was wanted and loved exactly as I was." The relief was overwhelming. For 45 years, I had tortured myself with images of my daughter feeling abandoned, unwanted, damaged by my choice. To know that she had been loved, that she had thrived, that she didn't hate me for what I'd done, it was more than I had ever dared to hope for. "Tell me about your life," I said. "Tell me everything." She smiled, and it was like looking at a photograph of myself at her age. "I went to Northwestern for undergrad, then Harvard Law. I specialize in family law, actually, adoption cases, custody disputes, estate planning. I think maybe I was drawn to it because of my own story. Family law, estate planning. A chill ran down my spine as I remembered why Harold had been able to find her so quickly. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and it might sound strange. Has anyone contacted you recently about me? About my family?" Her expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "What do you mean?" "Someone has been making inquiries about you, about our relationship. I think my son and his wife have been trying to find you." "Your son?" Sarah's voice was carefully neutral, but I could see the lawyer in her now, processing information, looking for connections. "Marcus, He's adopted too, though he doesn't know it. I think he and his wife have discovered that you exist, and they're worried about what that might mean for their inheritance. Sarah leaned back in her chair, her expression hardening. Someone has been asking questions about me, about my birth records, my adoptive family. I assumed it was just another adoptee trying to trace their own family tree, but now that you mention it. What kind of questions? Whether I had any siblings, whether I'd ever had contact with my birth family, whether I knew anything about my biological parents' financial situation. Sarah's voice was crisp now, professional. Mr. Whitman mentioned that you've been having some problems with your son and daughter-in-law. I touched my cheek unconsciously, and Sarah's sharp eyes caught the gesture. Anne, that bruise on your face. How did you get it? I had planned to lie, to minimize what had happened, but something about Sarah's direct gaze made me tell the truth. My daughter-in-law hit me. 2 days ago, during my birthday party. She wants me to sell my house and give them the money. Sarah's expression went very still, very cold. She physically assaulted you? It's complicated. They're saying I have dementia, that I'm becoming difficult and violent. They're building a case to have me declared incompetent so they can take control of my assets. And you think they've been researching me because they're worried I might have a claim to your estate? I nodded, feeling foolish. I know it sounds paranoid, but the timing of everything, the questions they've been asking. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was deadly calm. Anne, I need you to understand something. What you're describing isn't paranoid. It's textbook elder abuse. The isolation, the gaslighting, the physical violence, the financial manipulation, these are classic tactics used by family members to gain control of an elderly person's assets. But Marcus is my son. That doesn't matter. Some of the worst elder abuse cases I've seen have involved biological children or adopted children who feel entitled to their parents' wealth. Sarah leaned forward, her voice urgent. Anne, you are in danger. If they're willing to hit you, if they're willing to lie about your mental state, there's no telling how far they'll go. The truth of her words hit me like a physical blow. I had been making excuses for Marcus, telling myself that family disagreements were normal, that Haley was just frustrated and had lost her temper. But Sarah was right. This wasn't normal family conflict. This was abuse. I don't know what to do, I whispered. I feel so alone. They've isolated me from most of my friends, told everyone I'm becoming difficult and forgetful. I don't know who to trust anymore. Sarah reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her touch was warm, steady, comforting in a way I hadn't felt in years. You're not alone anymore, she said firmly. I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. We're going to figure this out together. But you don't owe me anything. I gave you up. I wasn't there when you needed me. You gave me life, Sarah said simply. You made an impossible choice when you were barely more than a child yourself, and you did it because you thought it was best for me. That doesn't make you a bad mother, Anne. That makes you a mother who loved her child enough to sacrifice everything for her welfare. The tears came then. 45 years of grief and guilt and longing pouring out of me in great, heaving sobs. Sarah came around the table and put her arms around me, holding me while I cried for everything I'd lost and everything I'd found. What do we do now? I asked when I could finally speak again. Sarah's smile was sharp, predatory, and I realized that Marcus and Haley had made a serious mistake when they started researching my biological daughter. Now, she said, we give them exactly what they've been looking for, but not in the way they expect. Sarah insisted on coming with me to the meeting. She sat in her car across the street from my house, a small recording device in her purse, and her phone ready to call the police if needed. We had spent 3 days planning this confrontation, and I felt more confident than I had in months. Marcus and Haley arrived exactly on time, which surprised me. Usually they kept me waiting as a power play, another small way to demonstrate that my time wasn't valuable. But today was different. Today they thought they were close to getting what they wanted. Mom, you look better, Marcus said as he kissed my cheek. The same cheek his wife had bruised less than a week ago. Have you been thinking about what we discussed? I led them into the living room, noting how Haley's eyes immediately went to the antique furniture, the family silver displayed in the china cabinet, the original artwork on the walls. She was mentally cataloging everything, calculating its worth. I've been doing a lot of thinking, I said carefully. And I've realized you might be right about some things. Haley's face lit up with triumph. I'm so glad you're being reasonable, Anne. This is really for the best. But before we discuss the house, I need to understand something. Marcus, why didn't you tell me you knew about your adoption? The color drained from his face. Haley shot him a sharp look, and I realized she was the one who had discovered the truth and told him. What are you talking about? Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. I know you've been researching adoption records. I know you've been asking questions about my family history. What I don't understand is why you didn't just come to me directly. Marcus looked at Haley, clearly seeking guidance. She stepped forward, her expression cold and calculating. Because we knew you'd lie about it, she said bluntly. Just like you've been lying about everything else. What else have I been lying about? Your precious daughter, Haley spat. The one you gave away and never told Marcus about. The one who might have a claim to this house, to your money, to everything we've been waiting for. There it was, the real reason behind everything. Not just greed, but fear. Fear that they might have to share their anticipated inheritance. You found her, didn't you? I said quietly. Marcus finally found his voice. We hired a private investigator. It wasn't hard. She's been looking for you for years. Sarah Crawford, attorney in Chicago, no family of her own. We know all about her. And what exactly do you know? Haley pulled out her phone and began reading from what was obviously a detailed report. Sarah Elizabeth Crawford, born March 15, 1978. Adoptive parents deceased. No siblings, no children, never married. Net worth approximately $2.3 million. She looked up at me with a smug expression. Did you really think we wouldn't find out? Did you think you could hide her from us forever? I wasn't hiding her. I was protecting her. From what? Marcus demanded. From knowing she has a grandmother? From knowing she has family? From people like you, I said quietly. The words hung in the air like a slap. Marcus recoiled as if I'd physically struck him, while Haley's face twisted with rage. People like us, she hissed. You mean your actual family? The people who've been taking care of you while your precious biological daughter was off living her perfect life? Taking care of me, I laughed, and it came out bitter and sharp. Is that what you call hitting me? Lying about my mental state? Trying to steal my home? We're not stealing anything, Marcus shouted. This should all be mine anyway. I'm your son. I'm the one who's been here all these years. And Sarah is my daughter, my biological daughter. Who you gave away? Haley screamed. Who you abandoned? She has no right to any of this. Actually, a calm voice said from the doorway, that's where you're wrong. All three of us turned to see Sarah standing in the entrance to the living room. She looked professional and intimidating in her dark suit, every inch the successful attorney she was. How did you get in here? Haley demanded. Anne gave me a key, Sarah said smoothly. Hello, Marcus. Haley. I've heard so much about you. Marcus stared at her with a mixture of fascination and resentment. You look just like her, he said finally. So do you, Sarah replied. Though I understand we're not actually related. What's that supposed to mean? Sarah moved into the room with the confidence of someone who owned the space. It means that while you're Anne's adopted son, I'm her biological daughter, which gives me certain legal rights that you might not be aware of. What kind of rights? Haley's voice was sharp with suspicion. Well, for starters, in cases where elder abuse is suspected, biological children have standing to petition for guardianship, even if there are adopted children in the picture. Sarah's smile was cold and professional, especially when the adopted child has a history of financial irresponsibility and domestic violence. We don't have a history of domestic violence, Marcus protested. Sarah gestured toward my face, where the bruise was still faintly visible despite my makeup. Anne, Would you like to tell them about the police report? I hadn't filed a police report, but Marcus and Haley didn't know that. Both of them went pale. You called the police? Haley whispered. I documented everything, I said, letting them draw their own conclusions. The physical assault, the threats, the attempts to isolate me from friends and family. That's not what happened, Marcus said desperately. Mom, you know that's not what happened. You fell, remember? You were confused, having one of your episodes. Actually, Sarah interjected, that brings up another interesting point. Marcus, you've been telling people that Anne has dementia, haven't you? She does. The doctor said... Which doctor? Sarah's voice was sharp. Because I've spoken to Dr. Martinez, and he has no record of any cognitive decline. In fact, he's quite concerned about the suspicious bruising he observed during Anne's recent visit. The room fell silent. I watched as the reality of their situation began to dawn on Marcus and Haley. They had been so focused on their plans to manipulate me that they hadn't considered the possibility that someone might be investigating them. Furthermore, Sarah continued, I've reviewed the power of attorney documents you attempted to have Anne sign. Did you know that coercing an elderly person to sign legal documents under false pretenses is considered elder fraud? It's a felony in most states. Haley found her voice first. We weren't coercing anyone. We were trying to help her. By lying about her mental state? By spreading false information about her health to her doctor and family members? By physically assaulting her when she refused to comply with your demands? She's lying, Haley screamed, pointing at me. She's a crazy old woman who lives in the past. She's making all of this up. Actually, Sarah said calmly, I have it all on tape. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus and Haley stared at Sarah, then at me, then back at Sarah. What tape? Marcus asked weakly. Sarah pulled out a small recording device. The conversation we just had. Where you admitted to hiring a private investigator to research Anne's family, where you discussed your plans to gain control of her assets, and where Haley just demonstrated the exact kind of verbal abuse that constitutes elder harassment. Haley lunged forward as if to grab the device, but Sarah smoothly stepped back. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Assault and battery charges would only make your situation worse. Our situation? Marcus's voice cracked. What situation? Sarah's smile was predatory. The situation where you've committed multiple felonies against a vulnerable elderly person, documented by both medical records and audio recordings. The situation where you're about to lose any claim to Anne's estate due to your criminal behavior. You can't do this, Haley whispered. She's our family. No, I said quietly, standing up and moving to Sarah's side. She's my family. You made your choice when you decided to hurt me instead of love me. Marcus looked between us, and for a moment, I saw the little boy I had adopted 42 years ago, the child who had been abandoned by his birth parents and was now facing abandonment again. Mom, please, he said, and his voice broke. I'm sorry. We're both sorry. We were scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of being left with nothing. You were never going to lose me, Marcus. But you chose to try to take from me instead of simply asking for help. You chose to hurt me instead of talking to me. We can fix this, he pleaded. We can go to counseling. We can make this right. I looked at my adopted son, this man I had raised and loved for over 4 decades, and felt my heart break one final time. Some things can't be fixed, Marcus. Some trust, once broken, can never be repaired. Sarah put her arm around my shoulders, and for the first time in months, I felt truly protected. You have 24 hours to remove your belongings from this house, Sarah said in her attorney voice. After that, you'll be considered trespassers. As they gathered their coats and headed for the door, Haley turned back one last time. This isn't over, she said, her voice filled with venom. Sarah's smile was ice cold. Yes, it is. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my new townhouse, watching Sarah arrange flowers in a vase by the window. The morning light caught the silver threads in her dark hair, and I marveled again at how much she looked like my mother at the same age. The transition hadn't been easy. Leaving the house where I'd lived for 37 years, Where Robert and I had built our life together, where I'd raised Marcus, had felt like cutting away a piece of my soul. But Sarah had been right when she said that sometimes we have to let go of the past to make room for the future. "The moving truck should be here around noon," Sarah said, turning from the flowers. "Are you sure you have everything you need from the old house?" I nodded, though part of me wondered if I'd ever truly have everything I needed. Some losses couldn't be recovered, some relationships couldn't be repaired. Marcus had tried calling several times in the first month after our confrontation, leaving voicemails that ranged from apologetic to angry to desperate. I had listened to each one, hoping to hear genuine remorse, but they all contained the same underlying theme. He was sorry he'd been caught, not sorry for what he'd done. Haley had made good on her threat that it wasn't over. She'd tried to contest the will changes, claiming I was mentally incompetent when I signed them. But Sarah had been thorough in her preparation. Medical evaluations, psychiatric assessments, and testimony from Dr. Martinez had all confirmed that I was of sound mind and body. The case had been dismissed within 3 weeks. "Have you decided what you want to do about the grandchildren?" Sarah asked gently. This was the hardest part. Emma and Tyler had been cut off from me completely, told that Grandma was sick and couldn't see them anymore. I'd driven by their school once, hoping to catch a glimpse of them, but seeing their confused faces through the playground fence had only made the pain worse. "I've opened trust funds for them," I said finally. "When they turn 18, they'll have access to money for college for starting their lives. Maybe by then they'll be old enough to understand that their grandmother didn't abandon them." Sarah nodded approvingly. "That's more than generous, considering everything. They're innocent in all this. Whatever mistakes their parents made, Emma and Tyler deserve to have choices when they grow up." The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Sarah went to answer it, and I heard familiar voices in the hallway. A moment later, she returned with Harold Whitman and his wife, Meredith, carrying a bottle of champagne and a small wrapped gift. "We come bearing congratulations," Harold said, kissing my cheek. "How does it feel to be officially retired?" I had sold my consulting business the month before, something I'd been considering for years but had never had the courage to do. Now, at 68, I was finally free to pursue the things I'd always wanted to try: painting, gardening, traveling with Sarah to all the places Robert and I had dreamed of visiting. "It feels terrifying and wonderful," I admitted. "I keep waiting for someone to tell me I'm making a mistake." "The only mistake would be not living your life on your own terms," Meredith said firmly. She was a retired teacher, wise and warm, and she'd become a good friend over the past months. "You've spent enough years taking care of everyone else." We opened the champagne and toasted to new beginnings. As we sipped our drinks, Harold cleared his throat. "Anne, there's something else we wanted to discuss with you. We've been talking about taking that Mediterranean cruise we've been planning for years. Would you and Sarah like to join us?" I looked at Sarah, who was smiling encouragingly. "What do you think? 3 weeks in Italy and Greece?" "I think it sounds perfect," she said. "I haven't taken a real vacation in 5 years." As we discussed travel plans and itineraries, I felt a contentment I hadn't experienced in decades. This was what family was supposed to feel like: supportive, loving, free of manipulation and hidden agendas. Later, after Harold and Meredith had left, Sarah and I sat on the small patio behind my townhouse, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Do you miss them?" Sarah asked quietly. "Marcus and the children?" I considered the question carefully. I miss who I thought they were. I miss the family I believed we could be. But I don't miss the walking on eggshells, the constant feeling that I was disappointing them, the fear that nothing I did would ever be enough. "Grief is complicated," Sarah said. "You can mourn the loss of people who are still alive. What about you? Do you ever wonder what might have happened if I'd kept you?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes. But I had wonderful parents who loved me completely. I had opportunities I might not have had otherwise. And now I have you. When we're both old enough to appreciate each other as adults, rather than as parent and child trying to figure out their roles. I used to worry that you'd hate me for giving you up." "I could never hate you for making an impossible choice with love in your heart. But I might have hated you if you'd kept me in a situation where you couldn't care for me properly, where I would have been resented or seen as a burden. The wisdom in her words struck me deeply. Sometimes love meant holding on, and sometimes it meant letting go. The tragedy wasn't that I'd given her up 45 years ago. It was that I'd held on to Marcus and Haley for so long when they'd clearly demonstrated that they didn't value me. "I have something for you," Sarah said, pulling a small box from her purse. Inside was a delicate gold locket, old-fashioned and beautiful. I opened it to find 2 tiny photographs, one of me as a young woman, the other of Sarah as a baby. "I've carried these pictures for 20 years, she said. "The adoption agency gave them to me when I turned 25. I used to imagine what it would be like to meet you, what I would say, how you would react. And was it what you imagined? It was better, because you weren't the tragic figure I'd built up in my mind, someone broken by giving me away. You were strong and kind and resilient. You were someone I could admire, not just someone I felt obligated to forgive." I fastened the locket around my neck, feeling the weight of it against my chest like a promise. "I love you," I said simply. "I love you too." As darkness fell around us, I thought about the strange paths that had led us to this moment. Marcus's greed and Haley's cruelty had inadvertently given me the greatest gift of my life. My daughter returned to me, a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than obligation and guilt. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, my heart clenched, thinking it might be Marcus again. But it was from Emma, my granddaughter, now 9 years old. "Grandma, I miss you. Mom says you're sick, but Tyler says you moved away. Are you coming to my birthday party?" I showed the message to Sarah, feeling tears sting my eyes. "What will you tell her?" "The truth," I said. "That I love her and I'm not sick, but sometimes grown-ups have disagreements that make it hard for families to be together. And that when she's older, if she wants to find me, I'll be here." I typed out a careful response, knowing it would probably be the last communication I'd have with her for years. But someday, when she was old enough to ask her own questions and seek her own answers, she would know that her grandmother had never stopped loving her. "No regrets?" Sarah asked as I put my phone away. I looked around at my new life, smaller, quieter, but filled with genuine love and respect. I thought about the cruise we were planning, the art classes I wanted to take, the books I wanted to read, the conversations I wanted to have with the daughter I'd found again. "No regrets," I said firmly. "For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." We sat in comfortable silence as the stars appeared overhead. 2 women who had found each other across decades of separation and loss. The past couldn't be changed, but the future stretched out before us, full of possibilities and hope. I had learned something important in these past months. Family isn't defined by blood or legal documents or shared history. Family is defined by love, respect, and the choice to show up for each other even when it's difficult. Marcus and Haley had made their choice. Now I had made mine. And for the first time in years, I was truly, completely free. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.